Uganda's annual headline inflation for October rose to 10.7% from 10% in September. This was driven mainly by a rise in rice, maize flour and sugar. Ausi Kibowa, an economist with the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights, Uganda, spoke to CNBC Africa's Julius Bizimungu.
The inflation rate has actually reached 10.7% in October. That is doubling in just a matter of 6 months. So in around March or May, we had this at around 5%. So we see it doubling. What this means partly is because inflation expectations are becoming anchored. So many producers are actually expecting inflation rates to keep rising, and that is factoring into their price. For example, we are seeing education institutions charging higher prices, but we are also seeing fuel stations not dropping their prices even while energy prices drop globally. So simply the cost of living crisis is still with us, and poorer households will actually suffer the largest brunt. Definitely, this will have an impact on our incomes and savings. We already see that our savings are being eaten up by the current rise in prices.
And then also, when you look at what is attributed to this rise in consumer prices, mainly you're looking at agricultural commodities, rice, you're looking at sugar, you're looking at maize flour. Why do these commodities continue to drive inflation in Uganda?
Yes, so I wouldn't really think, I'm hesitant to think that the rise in these prices is because of global prices, because I don't think we are a net importer of those specific items. I do think the reason why these prices are rising is actually could be attributed to the rise in the costs of their inputs. For example, part of this has to do with the rise in transportation costs of transporting these items from the points of production to the markets. And given the fact that transport costs are going up in reflection to the rising fuel prices, that's why we are seeing the prices of these specific items keep rising.
And also,
Uganda is actually having a rainy season over the past 3 months. So I wouldn't think this has to do with weather issues. Yeah.
And also in terms of energy fuel prices, how worrying are the trends we've seen in energy fuel prices?
So in October, we saw the energy prices drop, but these energy prices still remain high when compared to a year back. For example, compared to a year back, petrol prices are still 45% up, and diesel prices are still 52% up. And as I said earlier, partly this is because inflation expectations are already anchored. These fuel stations actually have refused to cut down their prices because they expect prices of other items to keep going up.
And also, how do you or where do you anticipate the trends to be headed, given that the country is already experiencing the Ebola crisis, that is in addition to the pandemic that has made things worse?
Yes, so sadly we now have a new pandemic. Ebola is with us. Definitely that is going to have an impact on the economy, and also it will have an impact on prices within the economy. One way we could see this affect the economy is tourism. Tourism flows have already dropped, and that means no foreign exchange through that channel will be coming into the economy. Without as much foreign exchange, our reserves could go down, and that would impact our import prices. there is also a chance that there hasn't been any communication yet of anything to do with a lockdown. But in any case, this happens, this could have an impact on prices. There are several ways this could affect the prices. For example, during lockdowns, we normally see an increase in purchase of food items. People are trying to stock up the few available food items. And that means on a temporary basis, that could increase the prices for those items. On the alternative, during a lockdown, the use of transport actually goes down, and that could definitely feature within the prices for fuel. Yeah.
And then also, do you think there's more that the government could do to caution consumers against these rising inflationary pressures?
Yes, definitely. There is a lot that the government has to do right now to protect households. What comes first to mind is increasing social spending. So what do I mean by social spending? That means government should provide more social protection, cash transfers for the vulnerable, food distribution to abate food crisis. For example, we had a food crisis in the northern part of the country, and it's only with food distribution that this could have been abated. And then we definitely, one other thing government could do is increase social spending for public schools and public hospitals, because in times like these, the vulnerable have no option but to depend on these public facilities. And then lastly, government could consider export restrictions for critical food items. So given that we are seeing prices of maize and rice go up, then there should be some export restrictions to cater for the local population first.
But also, to what extent is that spending already happening on social protection? To what extent is it happening at the moment?
Sadly, we haven't seen that reflected in the current budget. We are running a new budget since July, and what we saw was that only 0.3% of the entire budget went to cash transfers. So we haven't seen that reflected in the current budget. We are still hopeful that this could be given consideration in the coming budget, given that inflation is still with us for quite